Okay, today I'm going to be doing a holiday gift card, greeting cards, in watercolor using Arteza watercolor paints. This is the 12-piece basic set in the tubes. And then I'm also going to be using the Arteza iridescent watercolor half pans. This is the Magical Oasis set. I'll open that up and show you that real quick. Comes in a nice little case here. This is a brand new set, so I'm going to have to unwrap the colors I want to use. If you haven't used pans before, these are pretty cool because you can swap them out and make your own little custom palette here with whatever colors you get. And then also very helpfully, they have these swatch cards that they also tell you the name of the color on it for reference, and you can do little swatches so you see exactly what it looks like. And now these are the tube watercolors. I've already used these a little bit. This is a pretty simple painting, so there won't be too many colors. We're going to use the scarlet red and the crimson red. And the yellow ochre. Some dark sienna. And we are going to use a tiny bit of white. And then we'll grab the lemon yellow and the sap green. And that, I believe, will be all the paint we're going to use. So I'm just going to put these up here so I can have access to them. And tubes, they're not too different from pans actually. They basically just have moisture already in them so you can squeeze them out. And I have a little ceramic palette over here that you can use. You can use a plastic palette, whatever you have on hand. So let's see again. First, got my flat brush. Got a few different brushes here. Might not use all of them, but it's nice to have them on hand. I have a couple flat brushes, one long detail brush, and a couple round pointed brushes that are nice for watercolor. Okay. And then, so what I've already done is I have my drawing on here from my holiday card. And if you're confident in drawing, you could just draw it. If you aren't so confident, you could trace a reference image, or you can do a transfer using graphite paper or something like that. The only thing you want to do is that once you have your drawing on, you want to knock it back with an eraser so that it's not super dark, because we want the watercolor to shine more than the graphite. Okay. So there we are. And I've also, the greeting card size I want to do is 5x7. You can do any size you want, of course. But I'm going to do a 5x7. And this is a Arteza watercolor pad, 5.5 by 8.5. And this is very nice, thick paper, meant for watercolor. And so what I did is I just took a ruler and measured out my 5x7, and I have very light lines. I'm not sure if you can see those, but so I can just see the edges, and that's where I'll cut it later. But for now, I'm going to keep it on the pad because it's easy to work with. All that in mind, let's think about our base coating. Let's do the leaves first. As good a place to start as any. I'm going to just color in my bell. And there's different ways. There's going to be a white highlight on this bell. There's different ways to do that. The way that I'm going to do it today is the easiest way, as I'm just going to use some opaque white watercolor straight from the tube at the end when it's totally dry. We're not going to worry about trying to keep one place perfect without getting any watercolor on it. Let's see. Do that. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do these leaves a little bit, these holly leaves. I'm just going to do the edges. I'm going to take some more water right there. And I'm going to fill in the leaf. And that's going to give us a gradient, just touching those edges that I put it in. It's going to make a nice gradient all across the leaf. And don't worry about being perfect. One of the nice things about watercolor is it often looks nicer when you're a little bit more loose than you might be with other kinds of paint. I'm going to do the same thing for all the other leaves. Don't worry, these aren't going to be yellow holly leaves. They're going to be green. But that's going to be the next step. Boop. Like that. Grab some water. And take your time. Don't stress out. I know oftentimes when people aren't used to watercolor, they get a little stressed out that it kind of wants to do its own thing. But that's actually one of the best things about watercolor is it's going to do some of the work for you. You won't have to fuss over getting every little perfect detail. There's going to be some natural detail that develops just from using the watercolor itself on this nice watercolor paper. All right, you can see how those gradients already look pretty nice. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of that lemon yellow. And we're going to add this to our leaves. I'm going to see these start to turn more complex and start to become green. The other thing to know about watercolor is it tends to dry a little lighter than it looks when it's wet, so you don't have to worry if things look a little too dark. It's definitely going to be 100% of the time it's going to dry lighter than you think. I'm also going to put a little bit of this yellow in this bell here, just for some variation. Okay. So now let's do a base coat on the bell. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's do the gold top of the bell too. Almost forgot that. Okay, see where we've got it bleeding into the leaf there? That's perfectly fine. Just take a little paper towel and we'll just dab it. No problem at all. Okay. Now for the bell. The bell, we're going to start with some scarlet red. A little bit of that right there. You can see how strong these are. A little tube will go a long way with watercolor tubes. Oh, we got a visitor. Ooh. Can you say hi? Hmm? Can you say hi? Hmm? Okay. Okay. We got that scarlet red. Same thing. We're just going to get some color now. A little bit more water. Remember, you don't have to be perfect here. Okay. And then I take some of the crimson. Crimson's a very nice holiday color. Here's something you can do. You can clean off your brush, leave a little bit of water on it, and you can soften that wet paint that you just put down. You can get all sorts of gradients and textures like that. I'm going to take some more of that scarlet. I'm going to put that in there too. Some variation in the reds. And now with watercolor, we're almost always going to work light to dark. It's going to develop a little bit like a Polaroid. Okay, let's do the berries. So the berries are going to be, they're essentially going to be scarlet red, but let's put a little yellow in there. Just to make it slightly more orange. We'll just base coat those in like that. Okay. That's about what we want. And then just put some shading on them. Well, the base coat's still wet. And then with our wet brush, just blend a little bit. And we'll just work back and forth between the crimson and the scarlet. And dabbing with the paper towel is actually a really good way to get interesting textures too. So you can just crumple up like that and then go like that, and you get some cool textures. All right. Let's look at the greens. So we're going to take our sap green here. A little bit of that. I'm going to keep it pretty separate from my reds. Just so I don't make a mess of it. Pick up some water. Mix it in there. We're going to start filling in the green of our leaves. I'm just going to do the same process for all of them. And I'm leaving that little yellow at the ends because I like the way that these look with that kind of outline. I'm also leaving a little gap down the center of the leaf where the vein would be. Yeah, we're just gonna some textures. I'm sure you've noticed by now that these really do dry a lot lighter. And they won't be that light at the end. because we're going to keep adding darker and darker layers. So I'm going to mix up using more paint this time and less water, with still using that sap green. And just continuously build these up. And there's no reason to beat yourself up if it's not perfect, because it's just going to add to the character of the card. Okay, now let's start making it a little bit darker. Wrap some of this crimson, mix it with our red here, or with our green. It's going to make a brown, and then that brown is going to be more red brown if you put more red in it, and more green brown if you put green in it. But it's going to be darker. So I'm going to start dropping this. My leaves are still wet, so they're going to make gradients using this darker color. Okay, I'm just going to use my wet brush here. Still has a little water on it. I'm going to soften some of these edges and connections here. And one thing I want to do after this dries up a little bit is bring some more of the yellow in, because now that my green is dark, I can see that my yellow is not very strong, and I want to be a little bit stronger than that. Yeah, you can see that this brush, I really like these because you can do so much with them. They hold a ton of water, and then you can also bring to a really fine point and get lots of detail with just that little point there. And you can just work out, tease those edges of the watercolor there. You can also do, to show you this, you dry the brush out completely, and then you can pick up color with it, like that. This is really helpful if you have an area that's too dark and you just want to lighten it up a little bit. You can just pick that color right back up. I'm going to do the little trick here with the paper towel dabbing too. Okay, now let's bring some of that yellow back in. So I'm going to mix up some of my lemon yellow, a little bit of my yellow ochre. It's going to make a nice kind of gold color. And I'm going to start bringing that back into the edges of my leaves, so they have a nice gold tip. And it's okay if it goes over the green here, because it's just going to make it more interesting. Okay, and then let's see. The bill's pretty dry, so we can go back into that, start our new layer. We're going to take a little bit of this burnt sienna. What I want to do is mix that into my red crimson here. Just to get a little bit of the darker variation. It's a little more muted. Okay, we'll take some of that scarlet red. And then I'm going to take a brush with just a little bit of water on it. And smooth out some of these transitions. And then I'm just gonna switch and the smaller round brush here. It's just like the big one, just smaller. And we're gonna do some more of that yellow ochre on the bell and the gold top of the ornament. I'm just thinking about what parts of this do I want light and which parts do I want dark, and slowly building those up. Just using some water to smooth it out. That paper towel. Okay. Okay. And I'm just jumping around between different parts as they dry up. We can add to those berries now. Some more scarlet. Mix it a little bit darker this time. Okay, let's see if we can get a nice dark red. I'm mixing this red, crimson, a little bit of green. Test it over here. Yeah, that's lovely. Okay. So for this, this is getting close to probably the darkest red that I'm going to put on the spell. I mean, the ornament. Keep mixing those up. So I'm going to get that in there. And I take just a brush with some water on it. Work it in there. All right. Starting to look nice. Then take some of this scarlet and some spots to be even more nice and red. So we have a lot of variation in there. Just put in some and leave some hard edges, and then hit it with some water, make some soft edges until you get the exact effect you want. You can see I'm being kind of loose, just like I'm sketching out these shapes. So now we're going to mix up a darker yellow ochre with a little bit of that burnt sienna. Some water in it. So I'm going to mix up some of this red and some green. And we're going to do a mixture that is very dark and very neutral. It's not going to be black. It's going to be a really dark brown. Like that. It's almost like a coffee bean kind of color. I'm going to use that to get these details up in the crown of the ornament. There's a few places on the bell where I think that should work nice. Okay, I think we're starting to look pretty good. And don't worry about the highlights yet, because we're going to do those last. Let's just get some more of these gold colors back in the leaves. And there's actually some parts on the leaves that I want to lighten up. I'll show you how to do that. So your brush can be moist, get some water out of it. And you should be able to just gently touch it like that. That's going to loosen up the paint. And then dab it. You know, that's a little light spot. So you can do that anywhere you want to lighten up. And the key is that your brush is almost dry. It's just a little bit moist. That's going to help pick up some of these spots. You can even move the paint around a little bit like that. Like that. This is why using a nice watercolor paper is really going to help you here. Because if you use a regular paper, it's not going to let you do things like this. It's going to start falling apart before you get the effect that you want to get. Okay, so I'm just doing some details on here before we move on to the background. These parts are just up to you on whatever your specific Christmas card is. One thing you can do if you want a really intense color is just mix barely any water in at all from the tubes, and you're going to get a very nice intense version of whatever color you're picking up. Okay. Now we're going to do a very nice soft gradient for the background. And I think what we're going to do is actually take out one more color from our set here. Gonna take out a little bit of cerulean blue. We're gonna use very, very little of that. We're gonna be mixing it with the yellow ochre. The first thing we're gonna do is take some water. This is pretty much just clean water. And I'm gonna make sure that like all the edges of this are dry, or at least the whole thing is dry before we do the background. And I'm gonna wet all the background areas, and I'm gonna get close to the edges of my painting here. Doesn't need to touch. Let's just be close. I'm gonna get some water all over this paper. That's gonna help us get a really nice gradient effect. And we go back in with the color, it's gonna make a really nice cloudy spread out kind of transitions and really make the subject pop. And also the other upside to getting your whole paper wet is that it's not going to ripple the paper as bad as if you just do one little piece at a time. Okay. And I'm gonna go back in with my brush here, and it's a little hard to see from my angle or from your angle. Maybe you can see it better from the side. But if you look, you can see where it's wet. It's a little bit of a glossy reflection. So if you missed any spots, you just go in there and it's actually okay if you miss a spot, not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. Don't need to rush, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. Okay. So let's take some of this yellow ochre. It doesn't need to be too dark. It's okay if it's a little dirty. We're just going to start putting that in and get this nice gradient effect. This is just like any other part of the painting. We're gonna build it up. Well, right. A little too wild, you can dab up around the edges and soften with the almost dry brush. And then, so I said to take out a little bit of this blue. If I can open it. Oh boy. So we're gonna use just a tiny bit of that cerulean blue. I'm gonna dirty it up a little bit. And that's gonna come right here. This is gonna be a really nice effect. Shadows often have a little bit of this blue tone to them, a cool tone. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. Okay. Yeah, I think we can still go a little bit darker on that background, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, and then to speed up the drying, I'm gonna use a hairdryer. Okay, so now to make really nice Christmas card, we're going to use the iridescent paints that we talked about earlier. Or I should just swap it over. So we can use these pans that are built right into it to mix our colors. So we'll start with the ornament. And we're gonna get this red. So first we gotta hydrate the pan. I'm gonna work the water right into it. You can already see how this is sparkling a little bit. Okay. So let's add this effect to our ornament. I'm not gonna do the whole thing with that. I'm just gonna do sections. You don't want to overwhelm it and make it look flat. Just gonna do certain parts. So the texture back in. Okay. Oh yeah, it's very nice. Okay. And then our next one is going to be the gold that we're going to add to the bell and the top of the ornament. Same process. Hydrate the pan. This is a cool gold because it has like a rosiness to it from certain angles. It's very iridescent looking. Now we're going to bring that in. Remember, it's not to paint in the whole thing flat. We're just doing details to give it a nice little accent. Okay, and the next part we're going to do is with the titanium white, we're going to start adding some highlights. Now the white in watercolor, it's not really used to lighten colors. You use water to make your colors lighter. But you can add white to make your colors more opaque, or you can use it straight from the tube to add highlights. And of course you can add a little color to it too, so we're gonna add highlights to our gold colors first. So let's take a tiny little bit of yellow ochre here and some of this white. And we're just gonna tint it a little yellowy. And we're gonna put that in where we want our highlights. And we're gonna let that dry. While that's drying, we'll take white, just pure white, grab a little dot like that, just on the tip of your brush, and we're gonna add little dot highlights to the berries. Like right there, and right there. And we'll do the same thing over here. We'll put a nice highlight on the ornament. Okay, and we'll come back and put some highlight on the bell. Then if it's a little too intense, you can just pick it back up and put some of your regular color back down. But I'm gonna put a little ridge highlight right there. That's nice. And then I have a couple options. You might have one of these short handle ones, or one of these longer brushes. Let's try using this one, because this can help us get little lines. A tiny bit of water in that white, just to make it flow a little better. I'm going to try putting some little details in here. Very nice. Okay. Do the same thing with these leaves. And now I'd like to have a nice crackle effect. So add some water to that white. And we're going to start putting a crackle on this ornament. Oop, that's much too dark. I mean, too light. Yep. And you can get just about as refined as you want to be. But these are going to make really nice gifts when the holidays come around. Or you could even take a picture, scan it in, and then have a whole bunch of them printed. All right. Another option for finishing it up is you can go in and use a little pencil just to bring out some details. And you can use colored pencils, or you can use Arteza watercolor pencils are really nice for this, or you can just use a regular black pencil to just bring out some of these little points, little details. Anything that maybe has gotten a little lost in translation. All right, I think that's looking pretty nice. All right, at a certain point, you have to tell yourself stop fussing. And I am fussing. That's okay. All right. So that's how you make a nice holiday gift card in watercolor. And I hope you enjoyed this, and you'll tune in next time. Bye-bye.